All right, welcome in Periscope. Welcome in YouTube. We're going to get going with this again. This is something that you guys that were around in the fall understood. We had 2 podcasts going in the fall. It's down to 1 now, but the normal Friday morning podcast that goes up on iTunes is still there. And this is the Tuesday morning podcast, which we were shooting every Tuesday morning during the football season. Went up on YouTube, went up on iTunes. We wanted to keep doing it. Unfortunately, I'm not in New York on as consistent a basis this time of year, but because the draft is just 2 days away, I thought it was important to kind of bring this back to life, let you guys know that we will be doing it again once the season gets going. And I wanted to give you guys one of these before the draft because there's tons of information out there. There's tons of rumors out there. I've been on the phone for the last couple weeks straight, and just an exciting time of year, I think, for every NFL fan. Doesn't matter if you're a fan of the Browns picking number 1, you're a fan of the Eagles picking number 32, or you're anywhere in between. For the hardcore football fan, this element of roster building, this element of getting 21, 22, 23-year-old talent on your team, it's just a fascinating time of year for everybody who follows the NFL. And so I want to do this like we did it back in September and October and November and December and January. So we opened it up back then with 5 topics, 5 news topics, and then we went and answered your questions. We're still going to answer your questions. I want to make this very draft centric though. So what I decided to do, instead of going with 5 news topics, which we could do, we're going to just go through the top 10 spots in the draft. Now, if your team's outside of the top 10, we will answer your questions on Periscope afterwards. But I wanted to give you what I'm hearing through the top 10 picks, what I believe each of those teams is doing, where I think each of those teams is. And look, there's a lot of misinformation this time of year. You guys can all think of, I'm sure everyone can remember examples of teams kind of coming out of nowhere with their picks. Last year it was Mitch Trubisky, the Bears trading up a spot to get him. 2 years ago, it was Joey Bosa going 3rd overall to the Chargers. 4 years ago, it was the Jaguars taking Blake Bortles. So teams do a decent job of hiding their intentions. The best I can do right now is help you with the information that I've heard. And a lot of times the most useful information that I get is when I'm talking to teams about what other teams are doing, because it's these teams, it's their business to try to figure out what everybody around them is doing as well. And so I'm going to give you some of the buzz or I've heard around the league on what the teams within the top 10 picks are doing through all the text messages and the phone calls and everything else that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. So we'll start right off the top with the number 1 overall pick, the Cleveland Browns, obviously taking a quarterback there. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported earlier today that Baker Mayfield at least has been part of the discussion with the number 1 overall pick. We reported back on April 12th that there was a 3rd quarterback involved, and it was my understanding at the time that that was Baker Mayfield. And so I think John Dorsey right now knows what he's going to do. All I can give you is pieces of evidence on which way they're going to go. We wrote this in the mock draft a couple of weeks ago. I do know that Jimmy Haslam has asked around about Josh Allen. We also know that Jimmy Haslam was in attendance at Sam Darnold's pro day. I can tell you that Baker Mayfield does have support in that building. And so, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is some sort of horse race and that they're coming down the stretch now and, that the finishing gate is right there at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. I think John Dorsey knows who he's picking, or at least 99% knows who he's picking. For the rest of us, we guess. But what I can tell you is that when they started their draft meetings back on April 12th, Baker Mayfield was part of the discussion. The only quarterback of the 3 that would really stun me, the only quarterback of the top 4 that would really stun me going 1st overall would be Josh Rosen. Okay, at number 2, the New York Giants. This is sort of where the draft turns, because if the Giants take a quarterback there, well, then I think the possibility exists we see quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, 4. If the Giants trade out, team comes up and takes a quarterback there, you have quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3. There's still a possibility 1, 2, 3, 4, but you'd be taking one of the suitors off the table naturally because that team traded up to get one. And then if the Giants take Saquon Barkley or Bradley Chubb or Quentin Nelson with the 2nd overall pick, then I think you could see whoever the 4th quarterback is. Again, my sense is the 4th quarterback would be Rosen. You could see someone falling. So what I've heard and what I've been told to pay attention to is the comment that Dave Gettleman made about Gold Jackets. He has no history of trading down, so I think it would be hard for him to swallow the idea of trading down. And my feeling on it right now is that Saquon Barkley will likely be the pick. Here's why. My feeling is that they believe that they've got two or three good years left with the proper conditions with Eli Manning. And so this is about creating the proper conditions for Eli Manning. And just look at what the top backs did for their quarterbacks the last few years. It's become kind of a way to prop up your quarterback. Look what Todd Gurley did for Jared Goff last year. Look what Zeke Elliott did for Dak Prescott in 2016. Look at what Leonard Fournette did for Blake Bortles in 2017. This has become sort of a new way to prop up your quarterback. And Saquon is very much the prototype for the 21st century back, which is a 230-pound guy who can play on all three downs. And so I'm giving Saquon Barkley to the New York Giants at number 2. Again, everything sort of hinges on what they do. At number 3, my feeling is that it would be Baker Mayfield if Darnold's gone. If Darnold is there, I think that leads to a discussion. But I really like the fit of Baker Mayfield in New York. They're a little bit different where, with the Browns, I'd say, the one player I would rule out would have been Josh Rosen. With the Jets, the one of the 3 quarterbacks that I would rule out at this point would be Josh Allen. So I think there is some support from the coaching staff for Josh Rosen. I think there is a good feeling on Baker Mayfield. And I think Sam Darnold's the wild card, where if he falls to 3, now that throws a wrench into things to some degree. At number 4, Browns are up again. I think John Dorsey, from what I understand, is very focused on getting a blue-chip position player here. I think it's going to be Bradley Chubb, even if Saquon Barkley's there. That's the sense I get right now. Okay? He loves Barkley. In fact, I've heard people who are close with him say John thinks that Barkley's the best back he's ever scouted. But the other thing I was told to pay attention to is the old Ron Wolf rules. And Dorsey's really a stickler for those old Ron Wolf rules. One of the old Ron Wolf rules is you don't take a back too high. And I look back at Ron Wolf's drafts in Green Bay, and it held. There were no first-round running backs. And you look at John Dorsey, and he was able to get Kareem Hunt in the 3rd round last year. On top of that, adding a grinder, a tough guy like Bradley Chubb, to the defensive line room, they believe that can help Myles Garrett too. Shelf life's longer with a pass rusher over a running back. It's harder to find a pass rusher than a running back, so I'm giving him Bradley Chubb at number 4. At number 5, this is where things get interesting. Denver, I think, is motivated to trade down, but I think 3 players would be in play here. Gary Kubiak and the scouts like Baker Mayfield. Not sure the coaches are as hot on him, but there is support for Baker Mayfield in the building. The 2 position players I think would be in play here would be Denzel Ward and Quentin Nelson. And I think Ward's a wild card to go 4th overall to the Browns. But probably the ceiling for Ward is 5 to the Broncos. And so do the Broncos trade down? I think that's part of the equation here. I think that they would be willing to go further down than maybe the Colts would be willing to go. And certainly you could see Buffalo and Arizona being in the mix. And so Denver right now, the names you hear, Ward, you hear Nelson, you hear Baker, and you hear potential trade down. The Colts at number 6, if Bradley Chubb's there, I think it's a no-brainer. I don't think Bradley Chubb's going to make it there. And so keep an eye on the linebackers there. Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds. They're another team that could trade down. My sense is there's a limit to how far they'd be willing to go. They want to come out of this draft with an elite player. And right now I would give them Roquan Smith based on this scenario. At number 7, defensive back for Tampa. Keep an eye on Minkah Fitzpatrick. Keep an eye on Derwin James. Those are the 2 names that I've heard pretty consistently there. You are basically balancing the safer pick, which is Minkah, good fit for Mike Smith's defense, versus the guy who's got high-end potential. Like Derwin James, the way NFL people see him, Derwin James can be like a more athletic version of Cam Chancellor, where Minkah Fitzpatrick is maybe a little more athletic version of Malcolm Jenkins. So that's sort of what you're balancing. Minkah's great kid off the field, does everything right, was a leader at Alabama, all of that. And so a little bit of a safer pick than Derwin, but I think those 2 will be in play there. At number 8, I think that's the floor for Quentin Nelson, who some people view as the best player in this draft. He is a guard. That's a consideration. Denzel Ward is a player I believe would be in play with the 8th overall pick as well. If both those guys are gone, keep an eye on Mike McGlinchey. That may be the top end of where McGlinchey could go. Number 9, San Francisco 49ers, the name you've heard consistently. It makes sense. Tremaine Edmonds, there's a home for him in that defense, in the KJ Wright role. The other name you hear a little bit there is Roquan Smith, who I don't think will make it there, but now with Reuben Foster's troubles would make some sense. And then 10, Oakland. Again, another team that likes Roquan a lot. I don't think Roquan will be there. Marcus Davenport's a guy they've done some work on and would make some sense for them. The other name I'd keep an eye on there is, well, I keep an eye on 2 names in the defensive backfield because they've got issues in the secondary, Denzel Ward and Minkah Fitzpatrick. And now I'd be happy to answer any of your questions up here on Periscope. That's where we're at right now, the top 10 picks. We just took you through them. Again, if I had to guess right now, I'm going to give you Josh Allen at number 1 to Cleveland. I'll give you Saquon Barkley number 2 to the Giants. I'll give you Sam Darnold number 3 to the Jets. Okay, with Baker Mayfield being a serious consideration there. At number 4, I'll give you Bradley Chubb to the Browns. At number 5, I'll give you Baker Mayfield to the Broncos. At number 6, I'll give you Roquan Smith. At number 7, I'll give you Minkah Fitzpatrick. At number 8, I'll give you Quentin Nelson. At number 9, I'm going to give you Tremaine Edmonds. And then at number 10, I will give you, let's go with Denzel Ward there for right now. And I think the Niners could trade out. I think that could be a spot for either a Buffalo or an Arizona to come up and get Josh Rosen. So lots of moving parts here. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Baz at 2 asked me Packers at 14. The positions that I've been told to keep an eye on there, corner, I had a name written down, corner or pass rusher, like Josh Jackson there, Mike Hughes if they're okay with the off-field stuff, and then Davenport and Landry could be considerations. If Minkah is at 10, do the Raiders take him over the offensive tackle? I think yes, although McGlinchey could be in play there. Dallas moving up for Derwin. I don't think they'll move up for Derwin. The 3 names I give you there, Leighton Vander Esch, Vita Vea, DJ Moore could be one to keep an eye on there too. Why wouldn't the Browns do Barkley at 1 and a QB at 4? I've been asked this question a lot. I think it makes no sense. Okay, because if you're to take Barkley at 1 and a quarterback at 4, value of the position aside, the bottom line is that if you're going to take a quarterback in the top 5, you're tying your job security to that guy. And if you're going to tie your job security to a guy, that means you have to have conviction on that guy. If you have conviction on that guy, then you don't mess around. Don't get cute. Don't wait till number 4. Just take him with the first overall pick. Nelson at 6 for the Colts. I would not count on Quentin Nelson to the Colts at number 6. Again, I'd say I like Roquan or Tremaine Edmonds there. How much does Buffalo like Josh Allen? See them trading up if Cleveland doesn't take him at 1. I think it would be a possibility. In my scenario, I could see them trading up with Buffalo to get him at 5. Darnold to the Giants. I think they like Darnold. I just don't feel great about giving them a quarterback right now. Chargers at 17. Outside linebacker, corner, safety. If Derwin gets there, I think that they take Derwin. I believe that's where I had him falling to. He's sort of a wild card in this year's draft. You'll hear different opinions on him. Outside linebacker, potentially someone like Rashaan Evans could be in the mix there. Josh Allen to the Jets at 2. I'm going to tell you no on that. Would the Raiders jump a spot or 3 for Roquan? I'm going to say no because there are quarterbacks in play. The price tag goes up on what those top 8 or 9 picks are worth. What quarterbacks need to fall to Denver's picks for Denver's pick to have value? Any of them, I'd say. The one thing that could devalue Denver's pick a little bit is if a Buffalo or Arizona goes up to 2 or 4. So one of those suitors is then off the board. And you don't have teams competing against each other. But if there's any of the quarterbacks on the board at 5, any of the top 4 on the board at 5, there's going to be value for that pick. Are the Bills staying put? I don't think they're going to stay put. I think that they will make a move to go up, perhaps 2 trades to get into the top 5. That's something potentially they could get creative with, maybe going up to 6 and then to 2. Lions at 20. I gave them Deron Payne, I believe. Defensive line's a good place to look. Matt Patricia's the coach there. Versatile players make sense. Deron Payne is a versatile defensive lineman. Giants trade back. I don't count on it. Dave Gettleman has no history of trading back. I think he'll listen, but I wouldn't count on it. I know they've done some work on Marcus Davenport. He's one name you've heard if they do fall back. I think it would take a lot for them to go back. Is all the talk about the Pats moving up for a QB legit in your mind? I don't think they move up for a quarterback. Who is the Jets you have drafting? I had them taking Sam Darnold at 3. I think Baker Mayfield is very much a consideration, though. Bucks wouldn't consider Nelson at 7. I've just heard defensive back on them. Quentin Nelson would make sense for anybody in the top 8. Redskins at 13. Defensive line's a place to look. I've been told Vita Vea's name. I've been given Deron Payne's name. Denver trade back for more picks. Yes, I think they will look at trading back for more picks. Ravens, if it's not Lamar Jackson, look defense. Look, maybe a defensive player slips through the cracks to them. What's the general sense on Reuben Foster? I'm going to wait and see what happens. Obviously, the accusations are horrible. And, if what he is accused of doing, if he did that, then he should go away for a long time. I know I think we have to wait for a couple other things to play out. I'll put it that way. A sleeper in the draft. A sleeper in the draft. Well, if you want some names of some guys that maybe slip into the first round, what I would watch for is kind of maybe an unexpected development is in the early 20s, a run on interior linemen. I know that's not sexy, but like James Daniels, Frank Ragnow, Will Hernandez, like you could see like this little mini run with Cincinnati and Buffalo. And if they stick in Carolina, 21, 22, 24, we could see a bunch of them go off the board. What round does Maurice Hurst go? Late first, early second. Why is Josh Rosen falling so much? Because there are questions about leadership. There are questions about commitment. The stuff that you hear is real. Okay, I know there are. I'm not sitting here telling you the kid's not going to work. Because of his demeanor, because of his personality. What I am telling you is those questions are very real. And those questions are not new. Those questions are not just coming up. Those questions have been connected to Josh Rosen for 2 years now. So this isn't a case of the pre-draft process putting a kid through the ringer. This is like these questions were being asked about Josh Rosen coming out of his freshman year in college. He's been followed by this for a couple of years. Who are the Steelers drafting? Asking for my brother. I gave them Leighton Vander Esch. They're way down the line. They'd be a wild card team for Lamar Jackson for me too. Any Hall of Fame quarterbacks in this draft? If so, who? I'd feel most comfortable taking Darnold. I think if there's one guy who's got Hall of Fame potential, it might be Rosen. Patriots going quarterback with 23 or move up. I do not think so. I think if they were going to move up for a quarterback, it might be Baker Mayfield, and I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to fall far enough for them to have a real shot at him. You guys got more questions. There's still 250 of you in here. What will the Eagles do at number 32? I think they will try. They would think there will be a vigorous effort to trade out of 32 and to accumulate more draft capital. I do think that the value for them at corner and running back would be significant there with guys like Ronald Jones and Darius Geis at running back. And maybe one of the corners, whether it's Jair Alexander, Josh Jackson, whoever it is, there could be a good corner that falls to them. They're in a good spot because an offensive line would be a consideration as well based on the age of some of their linemen. Maybe a Billy Price there. They're in a good spot because their roster is fairly balanced and deep, and so they're going to have the opportunity, kind of like the Saints and the Jaguars have, to not press a need. If the Ravens go after offense in the first round, who is better for them, Ridley or DJ Moore? With Ozzie there, you almost default to the Alabama player. They need help right now, which tells me Ridley might be the better fit. There are a good number of teams that think DJ Moore is going to be a better pro. What do the Browns do at 33 and 35? That could be where they look at running back potentially. That could be where they maybe look at a left tackle. I don't think, they're in this, the Browns are sort of in this weird spot where, I think McGlinchey will be gone. I think Colton Miller will be gone. So, at 33, do you take a Connor Williams from Texas? Do you take the kid from Western Michigan? There are kids who are talented, who are kind of unfinished products or have holes that you could roll the dice on early in the second round. So maybe left tackle there, maybe running back there. Any talks of the Texans moving into the second? I haven't heard that. I think the Texans like the third and fourth round, so they're okay with where they're at. Obviously you'd rather have more picks, but they're okay with where they're at. Rather Chubb than Barkley. I think the Browns would probably agree with you. Dark horses for quarterbacks. Logan Woodside's a good, like a nice little guy to watch, I think, later in the draft. I've talked to a few people who really like him. If Denver trades down with Buffalo, who would they target? I think interior offensive line, again, if they wind up with that 22nd pick, you could look at interior offensive line there, and then maybe with the higher of the picks, one of the corners, like if they wind up with 12, do you look at a Mike Hughes? Do you look at a Jair Alexander? Because not only did they lose Aqib Talib, but Bradley Roby and Chris Harris are both going into contract years. All right, let's do 10 more questions. How about that? Then we'll wrap it up, okay? I'm going to count them down for you guys. Bring them. We got 240 people in here. Falcons at 26. I gave them Taven Bryan, the defensive tackle. They tried to get Bryan in for a workout, I believe, over the last couple of weeks. He is, I think, very much in play, a Dan Quinn type of player. Number 2 is Alexander, the second cornerback taken in the draft. I feel pretty comfortable that Ward's going to be the first. There's a group of, I would say, 3 or 4 corners there after that could go in any order. Alexander's in that group. Jackson's in that group. Hughes is in that group, where you could see those guys go in a number of different orders. Number 3, could we see 6 quarterbacks day one? No, I don't think that I don't think NFL teams are as high on Mason Rudolph as the public is. Question number 4, how many first-round wide receivers? I'm going to set the over-under at 1.5. I think either Moore or Ridley or both could go in the first round. I wouldn't completely rule out Courtland Sutton because of his high-end potential, but I think if I had to guess right now, I would say Ridley or Moore. What's interesting about this draft class is after Barkley, we could be waiting 20, 25 picks for another offensive skill position player. Number 5, is there anybody the Browns would trade back into the first round for? Maybe with Philly. Maybe one of the corners. That would be a need for him. Question number 6, Roquan or Edmonds in play for the Bears. I haven't heard Roquan's name. I have heard Edmonds' name there. Again, the names I've heard most often with the Bears are Denzel Ward or Quentin Nelson, and I think they'll be able to get one or the other there. Question number 7, Gronk getting moved. I think what he did on Saturday certainly was as big an FU as I've seen any Patriot make to Bill Belichick in the 18 years that Belichick's been there. I don't know how they patch this up right now. Obviously, there are issues between Bill and Tom. There are issues between Bill and Gronk. How do you clean those up? I'm not sure. Question number 8, what do we got? And if you were going to move Gronk, I think it'd be hard to get value right now because A, the next team's going to need to get a new contract done with him. B, the next team's going to have to convince him to play before they do that. And C, he's going to be 29 years old, I think, this spring, and he's got extensive injury history. Question number 8, is this 8 or 9? 8. Okay, Panthers at 24. Keep an eye on interior offensive linemen. I mentioned a couple of names there: Frank Ragnow, James Daniels, Will Hernandez, Billy Price. I think they ideally would like to, a Daniels would make a ton of sense for them because they could start him at guard. He could replace Andrew Norwell for now, and then he could be the eventual replacement for Ryan Khalil. Question number 9, Keenum long-term. Okay, so I've had this question asked a bunch of times. Why would the Broncos do that? Why would they sign a quarterback at $18 million and then go and draft one with the 5th overall pick? This is the new way to find quarterbacks. It's a model of overinvestment. We saw Philadelphia do it 2 years ago, where they signed Chase Daniel, they signed Sam Bradford back at $18 million per. They traded up twice for Wentz. We saw it last year when the Bears signed Mike Glennon at $15 million per, brought in Mark Sanchez as a veteran backup, and then went and traded up for Mitch Trubisky. It's just the new way of doing it, and I don't have any problem with doing it that way. You're throwing high-end darts. The Broncos, really, if they're willing to swallow a little cash next year, and they could get out of Case Keenum's deal after 2018 if they want to. It's just a 2-year deal, and believe it or not, $36 million is pretty reasonable for a starting quarterback in 2018. And this will be question number 10, my last question of the week. The YouTube podcast is back. Give me something good to wrap this up with. How's your draft record? I'm not sure. I don't keep track of that, but that won't be my 10th question. Give me a good question. 12 and 2019 round 1 for 6. That makes some sense to me. Because the Colts could look at that and they could say, okay, we walk away with the 12th pick. Maybe the 12th pick becomes, let's say it's Marcus Davenport. So we're going to walk away with Marcus Davenport, and We're going to have we have a potentially high pick next year because Buffalo could, level off a little bit. And what's going to be an incredible pass rusher class coming out next year. So the Colts could look at this and say to themselves, well, that 22nd pick, we kind of think that's kind of like a second rounder this year. Most teams I've talked to have about 16, 17 players with first round grades. Lots of teams are looking at the bottom of the first round, like 20 to 32. They're looking at those kind of like their second round picks now to begin with. If you're the Colts and you say, well, the 12th pick, so maybe we wind up with Marcus Davenport, and then the pick next year, and maybe that pick becomes Nick Bosa or Dexter Lawrence from Clemson or Rashawn Gary or Ed Oliver. I might do that. It's an interesting question. It'll be an interesting draft day with all of the potential trades and the moving around and the 4 quarterbacks going, in the top 10, 11 picks. It should be fascinating. I can't wait. I know you guys can't wait. I do want to promote a couple things. First of all, our traditional podcast, the one that just goes up every week on iTunes that I do with Andy Gresh and Lou Pellegrino, that will be going up on Thursday morning ahead of the draft. We're going to be taping that late Wednesday night, so it's as up to date as it can be for your Thursday commute. You guys will see that drop into your iTunes on Thursday morning. Also, the SI.com draft show. We're working things out on how we're going to handle the tipping of picks, but we plan to be a little bit ahead of the broadcast. The hope is that you guys will tune in. We can be your second screen experience. Maybe we can be your first screen experience. It's going to be me. It's going to be Ryan Aselta. It's going to be Jonathan Jones from the MMQB. It's going to be Andy Staples, SI.com, college football reporter. We're going to have it all covered from pick 1 all the way to pick 32 on Thursday night. You can check that out on SI.com. You can check that out on Facebook. It's going to be fantastic. Appreciate you guys coming out. Always give me your feedback. I love the feedback. I want to hear what you guys think about this. I want you to tell me how we can make all this better. If you guys want this every week, maybe I'll start coming to New York every week. But I enjoy doing it. And again, your feedback can only help us make this all better. And the interaction is the part of this particular podcast that I really like. So keep tuning in, keep asking questions, and we'll keep answering them. And always remember to listen to the MMQB 10 Things podcast, the MMQB podcast with Peter King. And one more time, this podcast, the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer, both this version, the YouTube version, again, the traditional version that goes up Thursday morning this week, Friday morning most weeks. You can get us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. That's where you can find us. Enjoy the draft. And again, check us out on Thursday morning when the traditional podcast drops. We'll see you guys then.